So when you're done, so we can plug that back into the...
Yeah, will do.
Thank you.
It's not going well so far.
If we don't get anyone on it, I guess I could just record a thing of me going through all these answers that were sent in and questioning, going through them and answering them, so people can then look at it.
That's right.
After.
Where's it gone?
I think, I don't know, can you just click on... Oh,
Where's it gone? Oh God,
that's a little
recording.
delayed.
Is it?
Can you just click on it? It seems to be a bit delayed.
I'm not sure whether this is.
Oh,
That's very delayed.
that's a little delayed.
Is it?
Can you just click on it? It seems to be a bit delayed.
I'm not sure whether this is. That's very delayed.
That's a little delayed.
God knows.
That other one seems, yeah, that seems to be live now. What we're doing.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if we got any.
I'm sure whether this is
I think, yeah, because I think that's what a recording will look like. This is, but yeah, this is definitely live.
Okay. Slightly delayed. Okay. One viewer. That's Stuart. Stuart, if you can see us, we can't see or hear you, which is a bit strange. That's what I was expecting. Okay. This is a bit poor. Catherine, we just got your email. I'm just checking that out. I could hear you, but you could not hear me. Can you send another invitation as now it's been deleted? Okay. Helen is struggling, not going so well. Let me see if I can send another invite from what we're looking at. Sorry, Stuart, hang on. Hello? Hello, Stuart. Oh, wow. But can you hear us on there? Yeah. But not much battery on it. Hang on one sec. Yeah. Let me see if that's a setting. I'm just going to get Catherine. Oh, so Catherine is back on and she can hear us. Yeah. It must be the sound on yours. So we got two viewers, and hello, Catherine, and we can't hear you, and I've no idea why. Can you? Have you got the Q&A? Could you send? So there's a chat message thing we've got here. Yeah, no, I've no. Well, we are learning, I suppose, but not very quickly. Yeah. Okay. What we can do one of two things. I can, because Helen wanted to join and is keen, but hasn't, and I don't understand why somebody without a Google account cannot join. It was previously that you could, because I'd send those invites. Yeah. Yeah, happily. Mathieu, it looks like, isn't joining because he did have a Google account. Richard is the one that I've not heard from, though I've sent him an email. But yeah, we can try something else. Okay. I mean, this, I don't understand why this isn't working, because you obviously have got the right feed. You're looking at us. 2 viewers back. Yep. Yeah, we could do that. The thing about this, and obviously it's not working, is that it goes on and everybody else can watch it later. It's a recording on YouTube. Okay, all right, let's, it is A.Owen, 1 second. Use it often enough to remember. A.Owen.proteus, Proteus. A.Owen.proteus, Proteus. Okay. All right. I don't know, Catherine, if you can hear all this, but we're just trying to get Stuart online. At the moment, I think so. I can't really tell, but by the emails, yes. I had to click on the settings on the bottom screen so you could hear me. Okay, well, my Skype is open. Hi, yeah. Okay, got your invitation. Oh, come on. Okay, I've accepted. Yeah, okay. I can, right, so Catherine can hear. You hopefully can shortly with Skype. What Catherine is saying, just so you know, is I had to click on the settings on the bottom of the screen so she could hear. So that's a message from Catherine that might help you. There's settings on the bottom of the screen. I don't know if it's her computer or... Oh, we're down to 1 viewer. The ratings aren't high. We got 2 viewers again. Ratings are going up. So, yeah. I'm going to hang up on my mobile. On Skype? No, not yet.
Do you have to call?
Yeah, he's calling me there. You're calling me, right, Stuart? Okay. Oh dear, technology. Okay. Oh, well, we'll try. All right, bye for now. Dear. So we may as well just have, well, look, we'll try. So we're going to carry on with the idea that this will be a video with a very boring preamble and into some questions which everybody on the JOGLE will find interesting. Sitting with me is a man who knows a great deal about what we're about to undertake, Benjamin. Benj. He has the good grace and wisdom not to actually run it with us, though he does choose to do other crazy things. So hello, Benjamin. Thank you for joining us.
No problem.
Questions that we've had from our panel, from our group, I should say, to you are, well, we're going to be expending a lot of calories, and there will be times when we only have 8 hours to rest, sleep, and eat before getting back on the road. I think actually that there will be intervals that are even shorter if we're on the night shift. So what's the fastest way of getting the calories in, and what should the split between carbs, protein, and fat be? Benj.
So I think there's quite a few different things here, and the main points I'm going to cover are the three main things that I would always recommend as really good recovery options. So if you can kind of try and stick to these after each bout of running, I think you won't go too far wrong. So we refer to them as the 3 R's. So rehydrate, replenish, and repair. So rehydrate, obviously, really important that you're going to kind of consume fluids after you've come off your run. Replenish, so that's talking about energy stores, so a good form of carbohydrate. And then repair, so some source of protein. As far as getting something in really quick straight after your run, potentially a protein shake could be a nice option. Wherever you can, I would say try and aim for real food. So depending on when you're stopping and if you're going to be at a hotel, I would always opt for that if you can. But obviously, straight after a run, try and get something on board relatively quickly. So whether it's a sports drink, that will start rehydrating, that will give you some carbohydrate as well, and then some sort of protein. So I would say a mix of both. Try and get something on pretty quick. It doesn't necessarily have to be a protein shake. Something like milk can be really good and really easy to get your hands on as well, and that might be preferred rather than if you haven't got big tubs of protein and you're relying on people kind of mixing it up and stuff like that. Milk or chocolate milk, something like that could be a really easy thing for you guys to do. Like any of the nutrition advice, it's so individual. So if you can, try and practice it in training, and you'll start to learn what works well for you. You might hate the taste of a protein shake. You might not think milk is that good. You might come up with something else. So yeah, try if you can with all of these things to practice it a little bit in training. But yeah, where you can, proper food, not just protein and carbohydrate, a wide variety of food, as you would imagine a healthy plate of or a healthy meal to look like, veg, a good source of carbohydrate, a good source of protein. And because your energy expenditure is going to be really, really high, pile it on. Don't worry about having big portions.
I guess the concern here is about density. So if there's little time and you do have to rest as well as eat, and you heard stories from the swimmers at the Olympics that they had such a busy schedule they didn't have time to actually sort of take on board. So it's about what's the maximum density of food that we could consume quickly so that we can keep doing the things we need to do, which is rest and so on. Is there any other advice there?
No, I mean, as far as getting it in really quickly and density wise, I think a protein shake would be one of the best things. Pick one that they're all going to be high in protein. Some will be just protein, but some will have carbohydrate in as well. So for what you guys are doing, go for that one, and then you're kind of getting it all in one go. And mostly the type of protein that's in protein shakes, it will be absorbed very quickly in your body. So yeah, as far as kind of getting a lot in quickly, that would definitely be a good way to go. And
so it sounds like, we'll have lots of Lucozade for rehydration. We'll have some carbo gels for carbohydrate intake, and then we will have some protein shakes to get inside us, but then as soon as possible, real food, big plates of real food as well. But that would seem to be a good pattern. Yeah, definitely. And
I've organised for all our Lucozade product to be with you guys for the whole challenge. And there's other things other than gels, so fuel bars. They're kind of like cereal bars, so things like that. Bananas, cereal bars, bits of fruit. It might not be that you feel like you could stomach a massive great meal, but if you're getting those kind of things in as well, that's also going to help. But again, listen to your own body, stick to stuff you're used to and you like. Don't force yourself to do stuff that you don't enjoy. You have to be comfortable and sort of be able to tolerate what you're putting into your body. So yeah, don't force yourself to go overboard with it all.
And when we're on the night shift, there will be 4 of us in our group, and we've got 8 hours of running to cover. So that will be a shorter interval. If we choose to run 1 hour, rest for 3 hours, and then run for our second hour of the night shift. There's a 3-hour interval. Is there anything in particular you'd recommend in that circumstance in terms of what we onboard with carbohydrates and protein, or is it exactly the same? And in which case, is it 1 hour before the next stint that we should just not take any more food on, or longer? How would you say?
Yeah, I would say sticking to the same principles of plenty of carbohydrate. That is going to be your main source of fuel as you go through the days, and that's going to be what is that's going to be needed to be replenished. You're going to be burning through it really quickly. So yeah, making sure you're replenishing that well. It is quite difficult because obviously you want to be doing all this stuff after one bout of running, but then giving yourself enough time to not eat before the next bout of running. We would normally, when I present for the London Marathon, we normally say having your race day breakfast anywhere between 2 and 4 hours before you start the race. Now, obviously, that doesn't really work with what you guys are doing. Yes, the race day breakfast for marathon might be a bit bigger, but yeah, I think you're just going to have to try, especially for this night shift, try and get it on board as quick as you can after the run. Kind of little and often keep topping it up as much as you can, but then be aware that the closer you get to your next bout of running, you don't want to be having something too big, and that's maybe where you want to go back to very easily digestible, absorbable things like the drinks and gels, because you'll be getting some fuel and some hydration, but it's not like eating a big bowl of pasta, which you might not want to do. But yes, that is going to be one of the tricky things. Moments, that night shift.
Okay. We'll come back to patterns of running, I think, in a minute, Benj. Next question, if we can go on to that, which is around. Have you got anything more?
No.
Next question is around a framework training plan, something around aerobic and resistance training for the next 8 weeks to get us ready for the frequency of the run. So what training plan would you recommend over the next 8 weeks to get us ready for the frequency of runs?
So this is quite a tough one to answer, because obviously everyone in the team doing the challenge has come from completely different backgrounds, and you're probably actually following reasonably different training plans, and you'll be at different levels doing different volumes. So it's quite hard to say exactly. If anyone wanted to email me with specific plans, I'd be happy to look at it and advise. But just looking at aerobic and resistance training, I've been kind of speaking to Andy in the office. Some resistance training is really good, core strength and strengthening your lower limbs. That's hopefully going to help avoid injury and be able to cope better with fatigue as you go through the event. With any kind of training, you want to keep it as specific to the challenge as possible. So, being out on your feet running. So I would say mainly stick to that. Think about the challenge in the time. Each person's going to be doing roughly 2 lots of 1 hour at 11k an hour, roughly. Two sets of that in one day. So try and start mimicking doing two sessions in a day at the very peak. I wouldn't necessarily go and do it right now if you haven't been doing that. But yeah, really think about what the challenge is and what you're asking your body to do, and being able to do that on consecutive days as well. But yeah, it's a little bit tricky to say exactly for the training.
Well, I think it's fair to say most of us are coalescing around a similar sort of level of fitness, but not similar speed, obviously. And so we must be coming together in our training regime, so as we're already in similar shape come the start line. So I think we're probably fairly similar. And there was a note came out from Dave this morning. I think he might be further along. So he's choosing now to leap into 5 days of running an hour every day. I'm personally doing an hour every other day at the moment. And next week I'm going up to an hour on 4 days. So I think, but we're gradually getting towards that point. But what would you say about that transition or gradual trajectory? How gradual should that trajectory be up to an hour a day, and then beyond that into what you're recommending, which is splitting the training so that we're mimicking the days of the JOGLE, where we'll have 2 sessions, morning and evening, broadly. So how do we ramp it up? How quick is a shock and risking injury as a general rule?
Normally, as a general rule, training plans should never, or you should never increase your training by more than 5 or 10%, be that distance or time. And that would be true of any training plan, because
is that on a weekly basis?
Yeah, or from session to session. So yeah, I would try and stick to that rule. And from what you've just said, that it sounds like you are following that. Doing a couple of days and then building up to doing more than that. I was looking at a couple. One of the other questions is about the amount of kilometers, but yeah, I would say the same thing. You don't want to. In some ways, you almost want to be doing. I mean, ideally, you'd have the perfect amount of training, but being ready for the start line and the challenge, if you're going to be one or the other, you'd rather be slightly under what you thought you were going to do rather than slightly over, I think, because it's going to be such a physically demanding challenge. If you've maybe gone a bit overboard and you've ramped up too quickly, the risk of injury is much, much greater. And the whole point is you want to be on the start line, feeling ready to go, feeling strong and ready for the challenge. So it's a really hard one, but try and be very strict with yourself about how much you ramp it up. And if you're feeling really fit and strong, it's really hard. Try not to ramp it up too quickly in one go. It can be quite tempting if you feel like you feel really strong, but try and be strict with it. And then the other side of that is most training plans for most events would have you peaking kind of 3 to 4 weeks before the challenge. So you can kind of work backwards from the challenge. 3 to 4 weeks out, you want to be doing your most runs in a week, if you like. So then you've got that point, and from now until then, you want to be slowly working up to that, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So your peak perhaps 3 to 4 weeks out, and that is the peak that you're going to reach now. You're going to have to accept that and track back to where you are now, and think that it's a 10% increase each week, and then that peak is what that peak will be. And to do more, to make it a steeper incline, is to risk injury, which is the worst thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you might start freaking out if you're looking at where that peak will be and think, well, actually, that's nowhere near the where I thought I would be or what I should be doing for the challenge. But I think as long as you're consistent in your training, as long as you train every week, you're without injury, you're building it up, so you're getting more and more used to doing days and hours per day and day after day. Then I think that is all you can do to feel like you're in the best possible position for the challenge.
Excellent. But if anybody would like to send their training program to you, that training program you can receive, but it should probably tell you not just what you're planning to do in the next week or two, but what you've been doing the last week or two.
Yeah, definitely. As much information as you could include, history of whether you've done sports, whether you've never run a mile in your life before.
All these people are now fit and strong and have run a half marathon or more. So they're all good runners, but it's about getting ready for this particularly challenging and unusual run. Yeah. So okay.
But yes, no. Please, anyone, feel free to.
And I can be the point of contact for Benj on those. If anybody wants to send their training regime, pass it through me. Okay. So next question. I'd love to know more about what physiologically is best in terms of the length of the run. So we've got a certain distance to cover. What are the bite-sized chunks? Should we be running 30 minutes, 45, and 1 hour? And perhaps to set this up, it's the idea of recovery. Is there a point at which there's an inflection point in fatigue, an inflection point beyond which your muscles take disproportionately longer to recover? before the next race. So you could run half-hour blocks until the cows come home, but you run hour-long blocks, you need rest. So, and I think it will vary between people broadly, but there's probably also a general rule which we're interested to know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I mean, looking at the examples that whoever wrote the question, kind of 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, I personally think sticking in the middle, I think a 1 hour is not to sit on the fence, but I think a 1 hour is a good amount of time, because you've got to be thinking about the amount of progress you're making, and you got to make sure you're constantly ticking off and clocking up the miles. And I think it will become harder if you're doing shorter, more frequent sessions. And then on the other side of that, if you're doing quite long sessions, so 2 hours at a time, I think that is going to be much more demanding on your body and require more recovery potentially. So I personally would try and stick to doing the 11. I think it roughly works out at 11K an hour, and then swap. And I think, unless anyone feels like they really want to do 2 hours or they really want to do 30 minutes, I would personally try and stick to that. And Andy shared the kind of timetable that you have, and I think that seems to work the best.
Good. And there is a scenario in which case we might have to reconsider, and that is if on day 4 a couple of knees start to swell, or ankles are twisted, or whatever. So in that scenario, fewer people are going to have to cover the same distance, and then we might be looking on average at 2 hours 40 per 24-hour cycle. And in that scenario, we've got a choice. Do we run for an hour and 20 each, or do we break it up into 3 lots of 40 minutes? So again, just looking at that scenario, any thoughts on that, Benj?
It's a tough one. I would probably, it's really hard to say, because it's very, very easy to sit here and when we're all comfortable and not feeling completely fatigued. Maybe the longest stint out of those two, but I'm sure if I asked you at the end of 4 days of consistent running and lacking a bit of sleep, I'm sure everyone would probably go for the 40 minutes. And that also raises an interesting question, because looking at the timetable, each team of runners will do one night shift, but then on the final night, it looks like Team A will be doing a second one. So I think you need to pay attention to that, about who is kind of struggling with injuries, and you may have to be just individually
3 viewers. Hello. Seems like we've still got viewers, so we'll carry on. I'm not sure what that will do to our recording. I hope everyone is back and watching on YouTube. And well, you were in mid. Do you want to continue? Where
I can't remember what I was saying. What was I talking about?
We started to talk about the physiology of 30
stints,
minutes, 1 hour, and 2 hour stints, and the idea that what would happen if through injury we found ourselves doing if we had 1 hour 20 or 2 hours 40 per person to cover in a 24-hour cycle. What should we do with 1 hour 20? Run a whole 1 hour 20? Do 2 lots of 40 minutes or whatever. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think if that scenario comes up, it will probably be at the end, nearer the end of the challenge, and so I think mentally and physically everyone would probably rather do 40-minute slots. If you're feeling like Superman and you're ready to go, then maybe you can take on some extra time. But yeah, I think maybe at that point it would probably be better to do less. And I think what I was saying before we cut out was looking at the schedule. Group A, or everyone does a night shift, as you guys term it, but then I think the Group A potentially will have to do a second, and injury in every group might affect who runs in that last night shift. It might, rather than being Group A, it may potentially just have to be whoever's feeling the strongest. I don't know. It's a bit hard to predict, and I think you guys will just have to kind of play it by ear as you go along. But that final evening may be the time when there might have to be a bit of room for manoeuvre and be quite adaptable with the rotor, injury dependent. That's
good. Well, live on air, we've got a couple of other questions coming in. So, but next up is, I plan to run between 60 and 100 kilometers per week from today to the end of March, and then decrease the number of kilometers from the beginning of April to mid-April, then to rest the last 2 weeks before we start. Does this sound smart? So back to the training regimes, and there's one in particular for you.
Yeah, and my answer would be kind of similar to the previous one. It would depend on what your training is at the moment. It sounds like a really good amount of kilometers. The one thing I was saying, or have been saying to Andy, is rather than necessarily just focusing on distance, you can always think about it in time. So going out and doing an hour or 2 hours at a time, especially if your pace is going to be slower. It would mean, if you were doing it by distance, it would mean you're spending much longer time in training out on your feet, which might have a detrimental effect. So maybe think about the time, and also, the actual challenge is kind of going to be measured in time. You're going to be doing hour blocks. So that would be one thing. Then thinking about the way you talked about the rest, and that kind of links to what we already talked about with the taper. 3 to 4 weeks before the event, I would advise starting to decrease your training. Don't just stop and do nothing. The idea with a good taper is that you reduce your training volume, but you maintain the intensity within a session. So you still have a variation in your sessions. So you'd have some easier sessions, some harder sessions, but don't make them all really easy, and don't stop and do nothing. You need to slowly reduce the amount you're doing to lead up to the race. And advice that we give London Marathon runners, especially in the last week before the challenge, I would really listen to your body, and whatever your training plan says, whatever you've read about tapering, the most important thing is getting to the start line in as best possible shape as you can. So if you're on the verge of feeling a little bit ill, or you're not sure about a session, don't do it. Just think about, whatever I do, whatever the decision, how is that going to impact me being on the start line in the best possible condition? So don't necessarily worry about cramming loads in the last, you know, in the days and weeks leading up to it. Just really listen to your body, and that is one of the best bits of advice I could give.
Okay. Question we've just had is on ice baths. What do you think about ice baths? And if I can frame the question, we'll be in a minibus immediately after the run, or we might be on a bike alongside our fellow runner. Ice baths might be a couple of hours away after our run. At what point, well, first of all, do you recommend them? Secondly, at what point do they cease to become useful?
Yeah, it's a very the research that I've looked at and is kind of out there on ice baths. It's a mixed bag. Some people absolutely swear by them, and other people would never dream of touching them. I think they potentially could be useful if you guys are going to be going into hotels or accommodation in the evenings, even just if you're able to run, you know, even if you haven't got tons and tons of ice, even if you're able to run a bit of cold water into a bath and just be sat in that in a bit, it might not do anything other than just make your legs feel a bit nicer. It just might feel quite good. So I would potentially give it a try. You don't have to, and again, maybe it's something to try in a longer run or a longer training session. You know, try it after your training session and see what you think. The next day you might think, actually, I feel quite good after that. I might continue to do it, or you might think that was pointless. I didn't enjoy it, and I don't feel any better or worse than I did before I tried it. So just give it a bit of a try. And yeah, as Andy says, you're not gonna have access to it straight after the run. So I think just when you can, in that time when you're in accommodation, if you have tried it in training and think it is helpful, and it might just be a placebo and give you a bit of a mental boost, but who cares? If it, you know, if that works, then that works. Then go for it.
And so it can have a place in our training as well as actual run itself.
Definitely, yeah. Just give it a try.
Any particular painkillers that we might use if we are suffering a bit? What sorts would you recommend?
Oh,
what do you use?
Yeah, well, there's lots of different things, and it would hugely depend on what your what the issue is. Have you guys got a masseuse? Is that right?
Got
that they might be able
physio.
to, yeah, physio. They might be better qualified and placed to recommend stuff. I mean, this is purely anecdotal and just from my personal events.
Liability. There's a waiver on liability.
Yeah, that's it. But you can get an ibuprofen gel, so you can rub it or massage it into affected local areas, and I you know, for me personally, I find that works quite well. That's not to say it would work for everyone and every different injury, but for me that's worked quite well. I think where you can try and avoid it. I don't think it'd be great to be dosed up on loads of stuff, but then again, if you know, it's a really tough, arduous few days, and if you guys want to get round that, it might come to a point where you may need to consider something. I would try and hold off and avoid just dosing up on loads and loads of pills. And especially some people think that they should do that before an event when they're feeling fine, to kind of preempt the nastiness of what is about to come. I would definitely not do that. Wait till, hopefully nothing will happen and you'll all be fine, but if something does happen, I would wait till it happens and get the advice from the physio and the support team that you have with you.
Good, thank you. Okay, I would like to have advice about running equipment and clothing that might limit the shock or impact on the body. So I think, you know, there might be, is this about training shoes? The socks can be padded. There can be some support garments that you can wear around calves, knees. Any thoughts on that, Benj?
Yeah, again, very individual. It would hugely depend on your running style and your running technique and your gait. Obviously, the trainers are the massive one, and I'm presuming that all of you have got new-ish trainers. That would be the main thing. Some lower limb compression garments, help to reduce in some way the shock or the forces that are kind of going through your lower limbs, but that's very, very, very minimal. Running, by the very nature of it, is very, very physically demanding. So I think there's only tiny little thing that the things that you could do will only have a relatively make a small difference. If you've had an injury in the past, a knee or an ankle, and you prefer to train with strapping or whatever, I would stick to that. So again, what you've been doing in training, but other than that, there's not really anything that I could say that will massively reduce the shock of it. So yeah, trainers, good socks, because if anything, but just to try and reduce blistering. Again, don't try anything new on the event, whether it's kit or nutrition. So whatever trainers, whatever socks, whatever shorts, whatever vests, whatever music you're going to listen to, or practice absolutely everything in training. Don't try anything new during the challenge.
Excellent. There are some socks which are sort of blister friendly, aren't there, which have 2 layers, and I guess that's something that everyone should consider.
Yeah, definitely. And any good high street running shop will have, there's the 1,000-mile ones, the ones you were telling me about. I run in they're called X socks, which I get on really well with. But yeah, again, it's very, very individual.
But in terms of shock on the body, what I hear there is there's not that much you can do to stop it. So it's about, and I think you said, when you get fatigued, your form can change as you run, and that can create different stresses and strains. And so protection can be core strengthening and some of that kind of resistance training. Yeah,
definitely. It's one of the points I'd put. So yeah, going back to the sort of question about resistance training, if you can spend time, even if it's in your bedroom in front of the telly, doing core exercises, doing lunges, and all body weight. You don't need to be doing it necessarily in a gym with big weights. Squats, lunges, single leg squats, planks, lots of different body weight core moves. All those things will help, as Andy said. The further you go through and the more fatigued you get, that your form will start to go, and that obviously increases the chance of injury. So the better strength you have in your legs and how stable your core is, that will really, really help to maintain good form and posture as you go through the days.
Guys, we're going to have to wrap this up potentially quickly if this meeting room gets taken in a minute or two. Few more questions if we can. Stretching advice. What is the advice from the pros on stretching?
Again, it's a bit like ice baths and compression. The jury's out whether it's effective or not. I personally think you should do a bit of it in the time between running, just to try and reduce stiffness and try and keep the mobility there. So I would definitely try and build in some. Obviously, it also depends when your cycling is going to be. If you are cycling after a run, that might kind of aid as a bit of active recovery, which would be great. And then maybe the stretching is slightly less important. I think it's a good thing to do. So I would try and build it in a bit, especially if through your training you've got tight areas or weak areas. If you suffer from tight ITB or tight calves or Achilles, I don't think it'll do any harm in you've recognized those areas and paying particular attention to stretching and even foam rolling. So yeah, if you've got those areas, especially in the race, I think pay attention to those in particular.
And so the advice you give before you exercise on stretching is
a dynamic warm-up, so not static, sort of old school static stretching, more things like body weight lunges and squats. For things like a marathon, and I think you can apply it to this challenge, because you're not going to be going off the gun really, really hard, really, really quickly. It's going to be you can warm up just in the first minutes of the actual time you're running. So I think a bit of a warm up is really good, and even things like wearing plenty of layers, not standing around being really cold in your shorts and t-shirt, especially if it's cold and wet. Hopefully it isn't. But yeah, things like that, keeping warm, hat and gloves, things like that, and then be ready to take them off, and you'll be ready to go. But definitely a few kind of lunges and squats and things you would do as a bit of a warm up in your training. But I wouldn't spend ages and ages doing it, because as I said, you're gonna warm up as you get going.
This might be springing a question on you, but the cycling and the running are two distinct activities that we will be doing back to back, I think, unless you advise otherwise. And they're slightly different muscle groups. So is it a good warm up previous to our run to be cycling for half an hour, or is that actually not a good thing? And then the second part of the question is, once you've finished, to get on for another half hour. Is that a good pattern? So half hour before warm up and a half hour after the run as a warm down. Is that a good pattern?
Yeah, potentially. I think if I'm right, that the cycling will be at the pace of the runner. So for the cycler, the pace won't be too hard. I think it would prove to be a really good warm up and cool down, as long as the pace isn't too hard. You don't want to be working too hard on the bike, and then you're actually ending up fatiguing yourself before you're doing your run. So as long as the pace is relatively slow and easy, I think it could prove to be a nice warm up and cool down. I use the example of international rugby matches. If someone's sin binned, or they know they're going to be put on the pitch, and the camera pans over to them, you'd see them on one of the watt bikes, on a bike, just very gently. You're not working very hard, but it's just increase the heart rate, get the body a little bit warmer, get a bit of blood flow down to the legs. Yes, you're using slightly different muscles groups when you're running and when you're cycling, but I think as long as you're not having to work too hard on the bike, I think it could prove to be a good warm up, definitely.
Excellent. There's some questions here on what to drink after running. I think did we cover that, or are you?
No, not yet. I mean, well, yeah, kind of at the beginning, a mixture of water, and we've sent you guys tons of Lucozade. You'll be absolutely sick of the sight of it by the end of it, I'm sure, and the sick of the taste of it. But yeah, I would encourage definitely water, not just Lucozade, but Lucozade's kind of giving you a 3-in-1 hit, so fluids, electrolytes, and carbohydrate. So something like that will be really good to get on board after. So yes, I would recommend having that once you're done. Hydration is very, very individual. Everyone sweats at different rates, so I couldn't give you a drink this amount of liters for every single person. But yeah, the general advice that we can give is drink little and often, avoid consuming large amounts in one go, and listen to your body. That's the best thing. Yeah, just try not to down liters and liters in one go. Little and often. It always gets a bit of a giggle when I do talks, but pee colour is a brilliant way to see how hydrated you are. So keep a bit of an eye on that in the days leading up to the race. You don't want to be starting the challenge dehydrated. You don't want to be starting the next day dehydrated. So little things like that, really pay attention to. If your pee is darker in colour, you may want to increase the amount you're drinking a bit. If it's quite pale, straw-like colour, you're hydrated and you're ready to go. So yeah, little things like that, really pay attention to your body in the during the event.
Good. And what about eating in the weeks before the JOGLE?
Yeah, so the good news is you can go mad with the eating. Obviously it's going to be, your energy expenditure is going to be really high, and it's going to be really high from the amount of training. The advice on kind of the term carbohydrate loading is bandied around and used lots in its most simplest form. In the days leading up to an endurance event, increase the amount of carbohydrate you're eating. Don't go completely overboard. You shouldn't be uncomfortably full, and on the morning of the start of the challenge, you shouldn't kind of roll out of bed and not be able to move because you've eaten so much pasta and cake for the last week. But increase the amount of carbohydrate you've got in your main meals, carbohydrate snacks during the day. Again, stick to stuff you're used to and you like in those kind of meals. A specific point on the meal the evening before the race and then breakfast, and this will also apply for your eating during the event because you're going to be running quite frequently. Try and keep fiber and fat to a minimum because they're going to be the things that are going to make you dash off to the loo. In some ways it's slightly less relevant because unlike a marathon, you're only going to be doing an hour at a time and then you're going to be able to use the toilet. So in that way it's slightly less relevant, but I would still consider that as especially the kind of the evening before and then breakfast. Don't go try and stick to quite plain foods, but again, stick to stuff you're used to and you've practiced.
Could you give us some examples just so we're not confused?
Any high carbohydrate, anything pasta, spaghetti, lasagna, potato, all really good. I can come up with.
Stay away from
list.
What you're thinking of. The
Yes,
porridge.
No. Porridge is also really good. So just anything that's really high in fiber. So I mean, things like bananas are good because it's a fruit that's got plenty of carbohydrate in, but actually compared to most fruits, it's actually it's comparatively low in fiber. I think people would have lots and lots of fruit, for example, and because that's obviously got a lot of fiber in it, that starts to then potentially cause some issues inside, and you're looking for the nearest portaloo or bush to dive into. So yeah, just keep it simple, and all the usuals, the classic ones that you would read about and hear, just pastas and spaghettis and rice and those kind of foods.
Good. Well, I reckon we've got to the end, which is very good. So Benj, on behalf of the Jogglers, thank you very, very much.
Pleasure.
I'll also share Benj's Twitter handle so that you can get in touch with him. And if you've got your training regimes you'd like him to have a look at, send them to me. In the meantime, thank you very much, Benj.
Pleasure.